Jackie and John, thanks for coming in today. This is the next step in the financial planning process. First of all, I want to commend you for kindly compiling and sharing all of your financial information. I know it's a big job and you've been very helpful in that regard so far. Today, we're going to review your recommended financial plan that we've all worked hard to develop together. And after you've had some time to review the plan, we'll discuss the implementation process and then determine the frequency and the responsibilities for monitoring your progress on your chosen alternatives. Now, previously we discussed your financial goals and we established the order of priority. First, you wanted to save for Jack, Jane, and Jill's college education. Specifically, we determined that 4 years at a state university beginning at age 18 for each of the children was the target. As it stands right now, you're unable to contribute to an education fund because of your debt burden. To your credit, you've recognized that debt reduction is a critical component of achieving your financial goals. I'm presenting an aggressive strategy to eliminate all of your debt outside of your primary mortgage within the next 3 years. You also expressed a desire to retire at age 62 with a 70% wage replacement ratio. You want an appropriate risk management portfolio and an appropriate investment portfolio. And finally, it's important to put some estate planning strategies in place. So let's talk about some of those things. We've prepared your current financial reports, including a current balance sheet statement and pie charts, a current income statement along with the pie charts. And I think the pie charts are just a little easier for some folks to read. It's very visual. And all of these are attached to this report. And I just ask you that you review these documents and let me know if you have any questions. But we're not going to go in great detail in those today. We also looked at some standard ratios that help us analyze your situation, along with something we call the three-panel approach. And don't let that scare you. It's just, you'll see what it does for us. I've also included some projections of these statements after 1, 3, and 5 years with the implementation of our plans. You'll also recall that we talked about your risk tolerance, and we determined an asset allocation strategy that suits your tolerance for risk and volatility. All of these reports are attached. And these reports are what we use to identify financial issues that need to be addressed to meet your goals. When we looked at those financial issues that need attention, we identified some risk management issues. In other words, what are some of those unexpected events that could derail your entire financial plan? We'll talk about your debt management issues, some increased savings issues, and those kind of go hand in hand. And we'll also have some estate planning issues that we need to discuss. And finally, we'll address some of the issues with your long-term goals. And as we discuss these recommendations, it's important, and I know it's important because it's in capital letters, we underlined it, and there's exclamation points. Don't hesitate to ask for clarifications on points that may be unclear to you. We want you to go away today with a clear understanding of just what we're trying to accomplish and how we get there. So let's start by talking about those risk management issues. With any young family, one of the biggest risks you face is premature death of a spouse. Your insurance professional recommended, and I think you should follow through with the purchase of $780,000 of 30-year term life insurance on Jackie. Also, you should consider adding at least $1 million of 25-year term life insurance on John. Together, these policies will require an annual cost of $1,240 per year. Your auto insurance coverage is also inadequate. You need to increase the coverage amounts to $100,000, $300,000, and $50,000 at a cost of $2,400 per year, and that covers both cars. That's an increase of $1,200 per year over your current policy. And you should also consider purchasing a $1 million personal liability umbrella policy at an annual cost of $250. Now, I don't want you to panic about these extra costs. We're going to explain later how you actually cover these extra costs. Your disability insurance currently it's going to replace just 52% of your gross pay. And it covers only if you can't perform your own occupation. So consider increasing your coverage to 60% of your current income and move to a split dollar policy. It's better coverage, and by increasing the elimination period to 120 days from your current policy's 30 days, the premium only increases from $900 annually to $1,116 annually. In the future, now we can't help you with that policy, by the way, but we went out and priced some of these things, and that seems like a reasonable price. In the future, we'll have a discussion about long-term care insurance and whether that's appropriate for your situation. When we look at your debt, I want to start with the idea of refinancing your home. Now, you were concerned that you wouldn't be able to qualify for refinancing. And I want to point out that refinancing is not out of the question, but it's not included in this analysis. I check with lenders about eligibility for programs that you may qualify for under HARP. If you need a referral to a lender that could help you with this, I can provide one. We've attached amortization schedules that show at current rates your monthly payment on a 15-year mortgage would increase by just $64 a month, and that would save you over $144,000 in interest over the lifetime of the loan. We can discuss this more if you find out that you do qualify. You'll want to make sure, though, that a refinancing plan allows you to keep your home equity line of credit in place, because that is an important part of this debt reduction plan. I think you should consider paying off your credit card debt in full by selling your ATV, which you estimated was currently worth around $4,000. And selling $12,000 worth of stock B would cover the rest of the credit card debt. You'll have a long-term capital gain of around $1,048, which increases your next year's tax burden by about $157. However, this saves you $240 in credit card interest in the first month alone. Consider paying off all of your student loan debt through the sale of $4,000 of jewelry and $24,878 in stock A. Your long-term capital gain from the sale of stock A is $3,165, which translates to an increase of $475 on next year's tax return. However, this move saves more than $620 in student loan interest expense in the first 3 months. Now, the sale of stocks A and B also help us move toward a more appropriate asset allocation for your portfolio. Since we're considering stocks A and B as retirement assets, we should take a closer look at how those stocks fit with your 401k and the asset allocation model we've put together for you based on your risk tolerance. One last thing regarding stocks A and B. Right now, if you don't sell those stocks and with your other savings for retirement, you would be on pace for retirement at age 62 with a 70% wage replacement ratio. But as you've pointed out and agreed to, you need to reduce your debt. And what I've attempted to do here is balance your need for debt reduction with your need for retirement savings and education savings. I also think you should consider consolidating your bank loan and your car loans into your existing home equity line of credit and make payments of $705 per month. These moves will leave you with only your primary mortgage debt after just 36 months. It's important to note that your home equity line of credit has a variable interest rate, and that could go up, which could increase your debt payoff time frame. Interest rate movements are difficult to predict. However, the Fed haven't really shown much of an appetite to increase rates anytime soon, and our firm really doesn't believe interest rates are going to increase rapidly at this time, but you do need to know that interest rate movements up or down are always a possibility, and they could affect this plan. Now let's move on to the increased savings issues. Let me point out that I am not a tax professional and you should consult one, but it appears that you will have a tax refund coming to you in the next couple of months of slightly more than $12,000. Use $1,000 of this to cover estate documents that we're going to discuss later. Use the remaining $11,000 to add to your money market to increase your emergency fund to just under 5 months' worth of non-discretionary spending. Now, this is important. If you increase your elimination period on your disability insurance to 120 days, as we've suggested earlier, we want to be able to cover any expenses during that elimination period when your disability insurance is not paying you. And that's why it's important to pump up that emergency fund. It appears to me that you could safely reduce your tax withholding by $9,000 per year, taking into account your long-term capital gains for selling stocks A and B and factoring in a 3% salary increase. You can use that increased cash flow to establish 529 accounts for Jack and Jill. Starting 529 contributions in the amount of $5,951 per year, very precise here, could fully fund Jack's 4-year education at a public university. Using that added cash flow from the tax withholding reduction and some of your debt reduction savings, you could contribute $4,312, again very precise, to Jill's 529 plan. Then after 3 years, you will have paid off all debt except your primary mortgage, and at that point, you could increase contributions to Jill's 529 plan and start Jane's 529 plan. Jill's education could be fully funded from that point, but Jane is going to need some help, and you had mentioned that the children's grandparents might be willing to help in this area. And of course, as always, time is your most precious asset when you're saving money, so the sooner the better. If the grandparents can get involved early on here, that would be very helpful. And remember, with the 529 plan, you can always change the beneficiary of that account. So if, for example, Jack gets a full scholarship, or he decides to join a rock band and not go to college, which probably will not happen, his 529 savings account can be used for Jane and Jill. With no estate planning documents, it's important that you contact an attorney to draw up a basic will. Your estimated cost is $1,000, and as I mentioned before, it can be paid for with part of your tax refund. Any will should outline who will serve as guardians or trustees for your children, an advance medical directive, and a durable power of attorney for health care. There are some issues with your long-term goals. It would be difficult at this point for you to achieve your goals of retirement at 62 with a 70% wage replacement ratio and full funding for all 3 children's public university educations with the debt reduction plan we've suggested. This would require an additional savings in your current situation of more than $36,000 per year, and you can see that with the retirement and education schedules that we've attached. So we do have some alternatives to consider here. Retirement at 65 with a 70% wage replacement ratio requires no additional retirement savings from what you're currently doing, but it does not fully fund all 3 children's education. Retirement at 67 with a 70% wage replacement ratio would allow you to reduce your retirement savings, which isn't necessarily a great idea, but you could add more to your education savings and you'd still have a bit of a shortfall for education. Another alternative is for Jackie to return to work to help with retirement and education savings in 5 years. She would have to make at least $33,500 to achieve early retirement at 62 and cover the tuition shortfall. Now, I will say this. Jackie has obviously made some great progress by staying at home with your children, and they seem ahead of the game when it comes to education. And again, I always like to point out, from a personal standpoint, that worked very well with my family. My kids were very good students, and they did get some of those merit scholarships. In fact, one went to school absolutely free at the Air Force Academy. So a big proponent of the military academies for education. But regardless of what happens, those are some of your options. We recommend you consider the retirement at age 65 with 70% wage replacement option and undertake these steps outlined in debt reduction. It requires no additional retirement savings at this time, and it allows you to fund a substantial portion of your children's college educations. Keep in mind that if any of the children receive merit scholarships, as I've suggested, or go to a military academy, or take out student loans, or get help from their grandparents, or get an athletic scholarship, you could cover all or most of the remaining difference. Also keep in mind that you are likely to receive salary increases over time, and the extra cash flow you get from debt reduction over time could help you reach your financial goals even sooner. And that's why it's important for us to reevaluate from time to time where we stand on your goals and how far you've progressed. After you have some time to consider these alternatives, we're going to revise the plan to reflect your decision, and we'll perform a detailed sensitivity analysis of your selected choice. And what that means is just we run a lot of different scenarios. What if we don't get the rate of return that we think we're going to get? Maybe inflation runs higher than what we've assumed in this case. So we will do that type of sensitivity analysis to whatever plan you choose. This is a summary of how we're able to adjust your cash flows. You'll have some added expenses for the personal liability umbrella policy, the 2 life insurance policies, the increased coverages on the car insurance, the disability insurance changes, and starting up the 529 savings plans. However, we managed to increase your cash flow by over $18,000 with the debt reduction steps and using your home equity line of credit. And John, by reducing your tax withholding at work by $9,000 a year, overall, we produce a net change of more than $14,000 in recurring cash flows. You'll also have one-time cash flows of $1,000 to pay for the will set, and then, of course, the tax refund of $12,000. The issues we address today will move your risk management from deficient to adequate. Debt management remains deficient for now. However, by year 3, we should be in the adequate range. Your savings rate is adequate for retirement at 65, and if we stick to our plans for debt reduction and applying some of those savings to future education savings, you should be adequate there too. And if we get some help from the grandparents on 529 plans, that would be all the better. Your estate planning issues will be addressed with the will. And finally, we've provided some alternatives for your long-term goals. So for now, we're going to leave that one as open. Once you've made your decision, we'll move that one on to adequate. Again, in the future, you're going to receive salary increases, which should make this plan easier to achieve over time. And I wouldn't totally count you out for a retirement at 62 sometime in the future, but for now, 65 seems much more realistic. When you've made a decision on which of the retirement options best fits your situation, we'll address uncertainties that exist in any financial plan and develop contingency plans as needed. You've been provided with several reports to take with you to help make your decisions. And remember, we're always available to answer any questions related to these documents. So don't hesitate to give us a call if there are any questions at all. There's a lot there to weed through. I understand that, and may not all make sense, but we are here to answer those questions. We've included the following reports that include the effect of our recommendations, and they're available for you to take with you today. We've got projected financials, including balance sheets and income statements with 1, 3, and 5-year projections, and some ratio analysis, and of course that 3-panel approach report. I'd like to point out that your current net worth is $241,791, and we project that 5 years from now, if you undertake what we're suggesting here, that number will grow to more than $462,000. After this meeting, we'll be sending you a letter detailing our specific recommendations, all the things we talked about here today. We'll meet you in 2 weeks to address the remaining issues concerning your retirement options. Please indicate which of the recommendations you want to implement yourself and which recommendations you want us to implement. Bring this with you to our next meeting. If we're able to implement some of the recommendations, we may need a letter of authorization, or maybe it's as simple as just having you on the phone with us. Going forward, as I mentioned, we should plan to meet at least every 6 months to monitor and, if necessary, adjust the plan. So don't hesitate to call us with any questions. It's very important to inform us as soon as possible if there are any significant changes to your situation. So John and Jackie, it's now time for you to decide which, I'm going to let you go home and then make your decision on which plan you would like to choose. And for right now, thank you for your time, and I'll look forward to hearing from you soon.